الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Continue inshallah ta'ala with the Akhsar Al-Mokhtasarat in Kitab Al-Mu'amalat in the Bay' chapter of Al-Bay', buying and selling, and specifically in the chapter of Al-Khiyar, or the different types of Al-Khiyar, the different types of the choice to break the contract, whether it's from the buyer or the seller. And the last one we talked about was khiyar al-ayb, which is the fifth type of al-khiyar. Khiyar al-ayb, or the khiyar because of the defect. He says al-qism al-sadis, with the fifth one. نعم. وخيار تخبير. You guys have that? Is that where we stopped? وخيار تخبير ثمن. وإن اختلف طيب. So where we stopped, وإن اختلف عند من حدث فقول مشتر بيمينه. So if you have this sentence, and this is related to the previous one, which is the khiyar of al-ayb, or if there's a defect. And we said that if there's a defect, فإذا علم العيب خير بين إمساك مع أرش أو رد أو وأخذ ثمن. If he get to know the al-ayb or the defect, then he has the choice. This is the khiyar, whether to keep it and to get the arsh, which is the percentage that is between the sound مبيع or the what's the opposite of defect? The one that doesn't have عيب. If something doesn't have a defect, what do you call that in English? No, not necessarily. Without a defect. Okay. So the percentage between the one without a defect versus the one with defect, and he get that percentage based on the value of it versus what he paid. And we talked about that before. Or to return it and to take a thaman. A thaman is what he paid. So he has the choice. وإن تلف مبيع أو أعتق ونحوه تعين أرش. And if the مبيع, if the merchandise is ruined, it's not there anymore, or أعتق, and the slave was freed, and the like of that, then the arsh is the only thing that he gets. Why? Because there's nothing to be returned. وإن تعيب أيضا. Remember that sentence, وإن تعيب أيضا, this is with regards to the merchandise that is already have a defect, and the mushtari, or the buyer, he has it with the defect, and he caused another defect to it. So there's two defects, one from the seller and one from the buyer. So in this case, خير فيه, the mushtari, the buyer, he would have the choice whether بين أخذ أرش, either to take the original arsh, the original percentage of the defect because of from the seller, وَرَدٍ, so either to take that and he's fine with it, he take the original arsh from the seller and that's it and he keeps it, or وَرَدٍ مع دفع أرش, or if he wants to return it, he has to pay the arsh after subtracting the arsh from the seller. ويأخذ ثمنه, and he would take what he paid afterwards. And this is where we stop. وإن اختلف, the subject of if there's a dispute. This is always something mentioned in buying and selling in many subjects, and also in Kitabul Qada, in the judgment, being a judge, when people having a dispute. So وإن اختلف, meaning the buyer and the seller, if they have a dispute. عند من حدث, the dispute is who was the cause of the defect. The defect of the merchandise was from the seller when it was with the seller, or it's from the buyer. So the buyer, he finds a defect in it, he wants to return it. The seller says it was fine when it was with me. You're the one that caused the defect. So he says, the buyer says, no, it's from you, not from me. So there's a dispute here. Someone needs to come and judge between them. So we'll take the mas'ala, the ruling in its simple form here. So you understand the mas'ala here. Then in advanced levels, inshallah ta'ala, we can get into more details. But you understand the mas'ala here. So if they have a dispute, فَقَوْلُ مُشْتَرٍ بِيَمِينِهِ. فَقَوْلُ مُشْتَرٍ. First of all, if there is a dispute, the general ruling is البينة على من ادعى. If there's a bayina, if there's an evidence, then of course that is to be looked into the evidence. If someone has an evidence, okay, then the matter is clear, and the judge or so, he would rule based on the evidence that one of them or both of them they have. But if there's no bayina, if there's no evidence, and it's only his word versus the other one's word, in that case, فَقَوْلُ مُشْتَرٍ بِيَمِينِهِ. Then who is word takes over the other is the mushtari. The buyer, he's the one that his words will be taken in this case bil yamin. He has to swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he is honest of what he's saying. And this is for the buyer again. And why? Because he's the one that is basically guaranteeing the matter. It's in his position now, and he's the one that paid the money for it. And this is again if there's no evidence to it whatsoever. فَقَوْلُ مُشْتَرٍ, but with his yameen, he has to swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that what he's saying is the truth. So all of that is with regards to al-khiyar, khiyar al-ayb, if there's a defect. Then after that, the next type of al-khiyar is وَخِيَارُ تَخْبِيرِ ثَمَنٍ. وَخِيَارُ تَخْبِيرِ ثَمَنٍ. We talked about al-thaman. Al-thaman is the price, the actual money that a person paid. تخبير from al-ikhbar, from al-khabar. That means this is a khiyar when someone is told when he's purchasing something that the seller will tell him, I purchased this with such and such money, where they call it nowadays like the murabaha and the like of this. So when the seller informs the buyer of how much he had purchased the merchandise, so the buyer will get to know whether the seller profited that much or lost on it or in the same. And that's why these are different types of dealing that the seller would have. Like whether it's musharaka or muwada'a or tawliya. The ulama, they have classifications to it. Like what I mean by this is because there's implications to that. The seller would say, I'm giving you this car, I'm only making $50 on it. He's selling it, for example, for 1,000. He said, I purchased it for 950. I'm giving it to you for 1,000. That means you know exactly how much he made money off of it. Or it's exactly the same amount that I paid for. I paid 1,000, I'm giving it to you for 1,000. Or he would say, I purchased it for 1,000, but because I want to sell it, I'll give it to you for 900. Right? So this is how takhbir al-thaman. He would inform the buyer of how much he himself purchased it and how much, whether he's making a profit or loss, or the same amount he's not making a profit or loss from him. Right? So what is the khiyar here? There is a khiyar here. A person can return the merchandise because of that specific way that he sold the merchandise to him. How? The next sentence says, فَمَتَى بَانَ أَكْثَرُ. فَمَتَى, so then when, bana from al-bayan, when things becomes clear. So he discovered or become clear to him akthar. That means he has been paying more than what the guy said, or more than what the seller said that he's going to pay. Right? So he discovered the buyer that he paid more than what the seller said. He said, I'm profiting only 50. right? But in reality, his profit is far more than that. So he lied, right? So the buyer discovered that. فمتى بان أكثر أو أنه اشتراه مؤجلا, or he purchased it مؤجلا. That means he purchased it to pay it with credit, to pay it as a deferred payment. Deferred. Deferred ولا deferred? What is the same? Deferred. Okay. So he had it to pay it, or deferred payment. So it's not cash, not immediate. أو أنه اشتراه مؤجلا, meaning the buyer would say, I purchased it for 1,000 over 3 months. And the seller says, no, it's 1,000 immediate one. It wasn't for deferred payment. It's an immediate one. وأنه اشتراه مؤجلا. So أو ممن لا تقبل شهادته له. First of all, this is all about تخبير الثمن. So the original form is that the buyer knows exactly how much the seller purchased it for and how much he told them that he's selling it with, right? So either he gave him more, or he purchased it on as a deferred payment when it's not, in that case. أو ممن لا تقبل شهادته له, or he said that he purchased it for that much money, but from his the one that his witness is not accepted, like his father and above, and the mother and so on, and the son, meaning these people, the usul and the furu', and some said the wives, you cannot take their witness because they will be in the favor of the person. So say for in this case, for example, that he said that he purchased it from his father, but he paid 1,000 for it, and he sold it for that much. But since it's his father, he might have, sometimes you might purchase something that it's worth 500, but because it's your father, you want to purchase it for 1,000 because it's your father. Or because of your, so these people you cannot take shahada from. This is in a general ruling. Why? Because they can say something in the favor of whatever they're witnessing for. So this is this is also لا تقبل شهادته له. So he said that when the buyer purchased it and he knew the price that he purchased it for, meaning the seller, it was from someone that his shahada or his witness is not valid because it's a father or a mother or a son or someone like this. He says أو بأكثر من ثمنه حيلة, أو بأكثر من ثمنه حيلة, which means that the seller, he sold it to the buyer, and he knew exactly how much he paid, but more than what it's worth, as the way that he made a hila, he made a trick, he was trickery in this. He said to him, for example, no, I made less, but it's more, but in a way that it's tricking him, whatever the trick can be. So if this is based on a trick, that he tricked him in this matter. And then he said, أو حيلة أو بأكثر من ثمنه حيلة. He paid more than what it's worth. حيلة, or more than what he said. حيلة, he made a trick as a result of that. أو باع بعضه بقسطه. أو باع بعضه بقسطه, or he sold a portion of it or some of it with the qist, with the portion of it. Some of it with the portion. What does that mean? And we talked about the qist before. The seller, when he purchased this merchandise, it was part of bunch of merchandise together. So say, for example, it was a car. So he bought cars, like a lot or something. He bought several cars, and this was one of these cars. So he purchased these cars for $10,000, 5 cars or whatever there is. And then he sold that one car to the buyer, in this case, and he told him, I purchased this car for 5,000 and I'm giving it to you for 6,000. We don't know how much he purchased it for because it was a deal with bunch of cars, right? So this is the example here. أو باع بعضه بقسطه, right? This is what it means. So it was mixture of other things together, and you don't really know exactly what one worth what. If it was specified in the deal, this is how much, this is how much, that's a different situation. That's here باع بعضي بقسطه, بعضه بقسطه. So that means the buyer in this case, he's deceived because he purchased based on the fact that this car was worth 5,000 and he gave it to him for 6,000. But then he discovered that it wasn't. It was part of another deal. So he has the choice to return it. So this is all choices to break the contract or return it. ولم يبين ذلك, and he did not inform him of this matter. ولم يبين ذلك. فلمشتر الخيار. So the mushtari, the person that purchased, he has the khiyar or the choice to return it back. Okay, clear? So now we have how many here? This is in khiyar تخبير الثمن. He, in the case that he informed the buyer of how much he purchased it for. So whether, anything that goes against this, he discovered that it was more, he purchased, he said it was as a deferred payment, but he said no, it's an immediate one. Or he purchased it from someone that his shahada, his witness cannot be validated because it's a relative. Or he got it with more money as a result of a trick, or he purchased some of it, or the seller, he purchased it as a deal with other merchandises, and he gave it to him with a price that is not really reflects the original price of it. So if these things and more, this is just an example which shows that the way that he informed them of the price, even though he didn't have to inform them of the price, but since he informed them, and sometimes people get comfortable when they hear this, so if they discovered that he was lying or there's a trick there or deception, then al-mushtari, the purchaser, he has the khiyar, he has the choice to return it back. And the seller has no choice but to accept because he made a mistake or he lied or things was not according to what he made the deal with the buyer. Okay? If there's something not clear, yes, no, the buyer purchased it deferred, and the seller said no, it was not deferred, right? Or vice versa, or the seller he told him that he purchased it deferred when it was cash. Anything that is against the price that he mentioned. No. Even if they purchase with the deferred, the buyer has rights to this. This is again when he informed them of he said something and it wasn't the same as he said. This is a very specific matter. So here, which is in case of the seller, like let's take this example, which is reflects exactly what he says here. If a man purchased something from someone as with a deferred payment, and usually the deferred payment is more than when it's to be paid cash. So the seller, he purchased that car originally from someone over payments, say for example for 10,000, right? And then he gets it and he sells it to the new buyer, and he says I purchased it for 10, but he doesn't tell him that he purchased it as a deferred payment. So the new buyer, he get deceived. He thinks that he paid cash 10 when he didn't. So then the new buyer, he would pay. So he says, I purchased it for 10, I'll give it to you for 10. I'll do you a favor. I'll give it to you exactly the same amount of money that I paid. And he's not doing him no favor. So, and he would get the 10 and he would benefit from that. The new buyer has the right to return it because he deceived him. He didn't tell him the truth. Even though the one that sold it to him, he doesn't have to say that to start with, right? Because the deferred payment is a loan on him. Is a debt on him. But since he chose to inform the buyer of how much he paid, then he has to say exactly of what happened. Right? No. He doesn't have to. But this is one of the forms of buying and selling. Some people, imagine someone in business and he puts a sign that all of what he sells, he would inform everyone how much he got it for and how much he wants to sell it for. This is how he do deals with business. And many people would come to him because of this. Because sometimes people they wanna know. It makes it easy sometimes for some people. If he choose to do this, that means he has to make sure that nothing is hidden or no lies or anything of that nature. Right. All of these is when the price to the buyer does not reflect exactly how much the seller purchased the merchandise originally by, or how much. So this is خيار التخبير بالثمن. Right? The next one is خيار وخيار لاختلاف المتبايعين. This is a special خيار here, which is the seventh one, is if when they are in dispute. When the buyer has the right to return the merchandise, if they both, the buyer and the seller, they have a dispute. This is, he says, وخيار لاختلاف المتبايعين. The khiyar here, the choice, because of the متبايعين, and the متبايعين مثنى, dual tense, meaning the buyer and the seller, they are different among themselves. الاختلاف المتبايعين. He says فإذا اختلف. So this is again, the contract is done and the matter is over, but then there's a dispute. فإذا اختلف, here's the different types of اختلاف, or the different types of disputes. And you can count how many or what is different kind of and so on. فإذا اختلف في قدر ثمن أو أجرة. If they differed, اختلفا, both of them. في قدر ثمن. قدر is the amount of the ثمن or the price or the rent. So the buyer is saying, you sold it to me, I paid that much. And the seller say, no, you paid that much. So they're in dispute. It's not recorded. It's just given in cash, whatever. Right? So there's no bayina. We're talking here about there's no evidence. If there's evidence, the matter is easy. But there's no evidence. And this is the ikhtilaf without evidence. في قدر ثمن. So the first one in the price itself, whether it's in rent or something that they purchased. ولا بينة. ولا بينة, there's no bayina. If there's a bayina, then the judge will rule by the bayina. Bayina is the evidence. Correct? أو لهما. أو لهما, that means the bayina here is one side has an evidence. So the buyer has an evidence that he paid that much money. You get his credit card or whatever, So you got to prove that he paid this much. Only one side. Or the seller has the proof of how much the buyer purchased it for. So this is bayina. أو لهما. لهما, that means each one have evidence, that when you have the buyer have three evidences, correct? And the seller have three evidences as equal, as strong as the buyer, that one cancel the other. So as if no one has any evidences. So when one evidence versus another evidence, as if they don't have any evidences. So we go back again, that they have a dispute without evidence. So this is the meaning of أو لهما. So both they have bayina, but one cancel the other. So in this case, what's the ruling here? Pay attention now what is going to be said. حلف بائع. And it has to be in that particular order, according to this. حلف بائع. البائع is who? Is the seller. حلف. He will swear. The bai'a, the seller has to swear first. They're standing in front of the judge. The seller has to swear first. And he has to swear exactly in the same words that are being mentioned here. ما بعته بكذا. I did not sell it with such and such. Because the khilaf here, the dispute is in the amount, the price. So he has to start with denying first, negating, denying first. ما بعته بكذا. I did not sell it with that price that the buyer is claiming that he paid for. So you want to say an example? So the buyer says, I purchased it for 100. And the seller is saying, no, you purchased it for 200 because he wants to have more money. So, and they're dispute and there's no bayina. So the ba'i', the seller, has to swear first by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he says, ما بعته بكذا. I did not sell it for 100. وإنما بعته بكذا. But rather, indeed, I sold it for 200. He has to say it like this, in the same order. So when you're studying this, you have to say if they are disputing in the price and there's no evidence, or there's no evidence that would be one over the other, then the seller has to swear first. And he has to start with negation first, denying first, and then affirming with the halif, with the qasam, with swearing. I did not sell it by that much, but rather I sold it with that much. Clear? Then ثم مشترٍ. Then the mushtari, then the buyer would be his turn after the seller, not vice versa. The mushtari comes next. He would say ما اشتريته بكذا. He has to start also by denying. He would say ما اشتريته بكذا. I did not purchase it for 200. وإنما اشتريته بكذا. But rather I purchased it for 100, whatever. So he would deny first what the seller is saying, and then he would affirm what he claimed to be the price. Because they're both having two prices and they're disputing about it. Okay? So you see here this is a very precise, exactly as it's mentioned like this. This is not just give an example and this is how it's an optional thing. No, this is how has to be like this. We're not getting into the evidences and things like this. We're just trying to perceive the masail in the proper way, and then we'll get to that later, inshallah ta'ala, in some other time. So clear? So after they do this, he says, وَلِكُلٍّ الْفَسْخ إِن لَمْ يَرْضَ بِقَوْلِ الْآخَرِ. For each of them, then al-fasakh is to break the contract if no one agrees or pleased with the statement of the other. Because, for example, if the seller starts by saying what he said, the buyer might, agree to this. And he quits. He says, okay, I'll do it. So when they both swear by Allah, and this is always in matters of, in disputes, why the bayina is there, the bayina, of course, the evidence, why would someone swear? Because if there's still some honesty and truthfulness, if someone swears lying like this is a yamin ghamuz, this is dip the person in the hellfire. So he might still have some fear of Allah, so he would, when he's asked to swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would back out. It says, even if he might deceive the situation there, and he would say, okay, I'll forgive him, whatever, but at least he would not go forward. And the other one might agree to it, and he would quit at that point. But if they don't, then the deal is over between them. Both, they swear against the other one's statement. وَلِكُلٍّ الْفَسْخُ إِن لَمْ يَرْضَ بِقَوْلِ الْآخَرِ. If he's not pleased, if he does not agree with the qawl or the statement or the speech of al-akhar or the other person. Then how they gonna, what's the deal here? It's mentioned in the last sentence. وَبَعْدَ تَلَفٍ يَتَحَالَفَانِ. وَبَعْدَ تَلَفٍ. What if the merchandise is talaf? Talaf means, we mentioned that before, meaning it's ruined. It's not there anymore. He purchased a cow and the cow died. Purchased the car and the car is totaled. So, still there's a dispute in the price. So they would still يتحالفان. They would both swear as mentioned. Okay? And then ويغرم مشتر قيمته. ويغرم مشتر قيمته. Mushtari, the purchaser, يغرم. He will be then, al-gharama is when you have a penalty, a fine. It's not an extra. When you say fine, that means it's something extra. No, it's something that basically what it says, that the mushtari, the buyer, he will pay then the money that he owes, or the value of it. No, I'm sorry, al-qima. So they would see how much that thing or that merchandise is worth in the market, because no, we don't know the price, because they are in dispute. So, and there's no bayina, there's no evidence, and they both swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody wants to back down. So then the one that purchased it, and it's ruined in this case, for example, or even before that, he has to give what is worth in the market. So someone would have to assess it, and then he would have وَيَغْرَمُ مُشْتَرٍ قِيمَتَهُ. So yaghram here is not that he would pay a fine, or just it's a word to show that he would then bear the money, that because he has to pay, because now they're breaking the contract, and the mushtari, the purchaser, he got the merchandise. So if he returns it, then that's fine. The first case, they return it. If they dispute and the merchandise is still there, as there's no defect or anything in it. But if it's lost and it's gone, then and they're in dispute with the price, then he has to pay. The mushtari has to pay the seller what's worth, or the how much it's worth, right? Hmm? يغرموا. Yeah, to owe. No. And then, so this is if they have differences, or the dispute is because of the thaman, the price, whether it's for something that they purchased or rent. طيب وإن اختلف في أجل أو شرط ونحوه. نعم. ولكل الفسخ. If they swear, both of them, then for each of them, they have the right to break the contract. الفسخ is to the contract is not there anymore. إن لم يرضى بقول الآخر. If he's not agreeing to the statement of the other side. So this is the الفسخ. So they can break. Basically, the khiyar is for both of them, for each and every one of them, if he does not agree with the statement of the other. And if it's ruined, then they also make the halif, they swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the mushtari will have to pay the like of it, the like of the price of the like of that merchandise. This is if it's with regards to the price. فإن اختلف وإن اختلف في أجل أو شرط ونحوه. Okay, here اختلف, meaning the buyer and the seller. If they both differed among themselves, في أجل. أجل is deferred, that the transaction was deferred. Or the other side, it says, no, it was not deferred, it was immediate. أو شرط. Or they differed among each other with regards to a condition. Someone claimed there was a condition in the contract that he purchased the car with the condition that it's to be delivered, or it's to be for this to be fixed, or whatever. Another guy says, no, you didn't. I did not take that condition. I did not agree to this condition. So they disputing about a condition, and the like of that, or any of the things that they might dispute upon in that merchandise that they are disputing about, buying and selling. وإن اختلف في أجل أو شرط ونحوه. So you see now what's the dispute is about. So in this case, فقول ناف. فقول, القول here, that means this is also is in the books of fiqh when they say فقول كذا, that means the speech is for such and such, that means the ruling is in favor of that. فقول, who is the qawl that we will take? Someone is saying this and someone is saying something else. So they're both saying something. Who would the judge take his words and ignore the other? This is the meaning of فقول. So فقول نافٍ. نافٍ is the denier. The denier is the one, and there's no bayina, there's no evidence, right? In case there's no evidence. So whose statement will be overcome the other one? The one that denies, not the one that is claiming. Because the original ruling is there's no conditions unless there's a condition. If people buy and sell, that means no conditions are there unless you introduce a condition. The norm is that people buy and sell cash, not deferred. So if it's deferred or there's a condition, you have to get the evidence. You have to get the bayina, the evidence that it's there. If you don't have the evidence, then we go to the asl. So the foundation of it is that it's just a simple buying and selling. And there's no bayin, especially that there is no evidence. So that's the meaning of فَقَوْلُ نَافٍ. فَقَوْل نَافٍ. نافٍ يعني the one that من النفي. Someone that is denying, he's the one that his statement takes over. أو عين مبيع أو عين مبيع أو قدره فقول بائع. عين مبيع. عين مبيع. المبيع is the merchandise. Right? So if they dispute with regards to the mabi' itself, to the merchandise itself, someone would say that I sold to you this car. He says, no, it's the other car. You know, two cars of the same brand and they look the same and everything. One is red, one is black. You know, something like this. It was just verbal. So, أو عين مبيع. So they're disputing in the exact merchandise. عين, the specific merchandise. أو قدره. أو قدر, which means the amount of it, meaning it's three cars or two cars or one cars or one car. So either the merchandise itself or how many of it, how many that he sold. This is عين مبيع أو قدره. So in that case فقول بائع. Who's the قول that will take over and there's no bayina, there's no evidence, is the seller. And there's a hadith actually that talks about the seller, he has the right. Because the seller is the one that lost, basically, in this dispute, or he might lose in this dispute. So his statement takes over. And plus, this is how it was with him originally. So here, فَقَوْلُ بَيْعٍ. We're not talking about the evidences yet. أو عين مبيع أو قدري فقولوا بيع. So we see here the differences. If they have a dispute, if the dispute is in the price of the merchandise, and there's no bayina in all of these cases, then they swear, the ba'a, the seller would swear first, with negating first and then affirming, and then the buyer. If no one agrees to the other, then they break the contract, and if it's ruined, then the mushtari or the purchaser or the buyer would have to give the like of the price. This is if it's with regards to the thaman or to the price. If their dispute is in any other matter, in the deferred payment or not a condition or so, then it's about the one that denies, whether it's the buyer or the seller. Why? Because going back to the asl, going back to the root of the contracts, it doesn't have any of these extras unless there's an evidence. Or the third one, if there is the dispute in the mabi' itself, in the merchandise itself, or how many of it, or how much, how many that he purchased, then it's the statement of the ba'a or the seller. The statement of the seller takes over if there's no bayin. And the last one here in this part, in this khiyar, ويثبت in the dispute. ويثبت للخلف في الصفة وتغير ما تقدمت رؤيته. ويثبت للخلف في الصفة. الصفة is the characteristics of the mabi'. So someone that purchased something that was described to him. It looks like this. There's no dents in it. All kinds of things. But then when he received it, he finds that it's different than what it has been described to him. So in that case, he has the choice to return it back. So this is ويثبت للخلف في الصفة. الخلف meaning there's differences in the صفة or the description of the merchandise. وتغير ما تقدمت رؤيته. So whether it's the صفة is different, the characteristics or the description is different than when he received it. And this is a very easy thing, right? You have something on the internet with full description. You received it, it's different than the description. Or وتغير ما تقدمت رؤيته. Or he saw it when he purchased it. Or when he saw it, when he agreed to that thing, he saw it with his own eyes. But then it changed when he purchased it. You saw the car and then the next day you purchased it. But within that 24 hours, something happened to it. So things changed. وتغير ما تقدمت, even though he saw it, but it changed. So in this case, and there's no evidence and so on, that means he has the choice to return it back. Clear? So these are the different types of al-khiyar. So we said khiyar al-majlis, khiyar al-shart. Remember the majlis? The gathering? The khiyar of al-majlis, the khiyar al-shart, the conditions in the contract. Khiyar al-ghabn, the very big loss in an abnormal way, not the normal loss or normal increase of the price, something that is absurd, something weird, something strange. And at-tadlis, when the seller hides something. And خيار العيب, a defect. And خيار التخبير بالثمن, if the seller informs the buyer of the price that he purchased the merchandise with. And so the different cases that we just mentioned. And the last one, خيار اختلاف المتبايعين. If they have a dispute, meaning the mutabayi'ain, the buyer and the seller, they have a dispute, and this is how to deal with the dispute in a very simple way. Any questions before we take the hadith? Then there's then the next chapter. You wanna let's read the last part. وخيار لاختلاف المتبايعين. We took that one. Oh, I'm sorry. وخيار تخبير ثمن. Say وخيار تخبير ثمن. فمتى بان أكثر فمتى بان أكثر أو أنه اشتراه مؤجلا أو ممن لا تقبل شهادته له أو بأكثر من ثمنه حيلة أو باع بعضه بقسطه ولم يبين ذلك. All of that فلمشتر الخيار. وخيار لاختلاف المتبايعين فإذا اختلف في قدر ثمن أو أجرة ولا بينة أو لهما حلف بائع ما بعته بكذا وإنما بعته بكذا ثم مشتر ما اشتريته بكذا وإنما اشتريته بكذا ولكل الفسخ إن لم يرضى بقول الآخر وبعد تلف يتحالفان ويغرم مشتر قيمته وإن اختلف في أجل أو شرط ونحوه فقول ناف أو عين مبيع أو عين مبيع أو قدره فقول بائع ويثبت للخلف في الصفة وتغير ما تقدمت رؤيته. Any questions before we take the أو عين مبيع. المبيع is the merchandise. عين مبيع يعني the specific merchandise. Their dispute is about the merchandise itself. This is عين. العين يعني not in general like you know their dispute is one is saying I sold this car with the model year this and you know the specific car, and the other guy says no, you I purchased another completely another one. So the dispute is in the mabi' itself, not that they agree that this is what he purchased but they're different something else. No, he says I didn't purchase this one, I purchased the other one, right? As something like that in cars. When you go to a car lot and you test drive a car and things like this. Okay, I'll purchase this. And with words, you purchase, you pay a down payment, no papers whatsoever. And then you come back and the guy had sold it already. Where's the car that I purchased? Oh, I thought that you purchased this. Exactly the same and the same car and everything. But it's not the same. So this is the dispute in the merchandise itself, not in the conditions, not in the price. So this is في عين مبيع. So now the hadith. So now we have we go to بلوغ المرام. Correct? What's you're the 88. جزاك الله خير. So hadith number 88. Some of the hadith might be not much different from the previous ones, but it's okay. 88. Bismillah. So hadith number 88. You guys ready? Hadith 88, number 88. Hadith number 88. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت سألت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن الالتفات عن الالتفات في الصلاة. عن الالتفات عن الالتفات في الصلاة فقال هو اختلاس يختلسه الشيطان من صلاة العبد. رواه البخاري. So here عائشة رضي الله عنها, she asked the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام عن الالتفات في الصلاة. Why we said عن الالتفات? Because عن with a سكون and ألف لام سكون. So you have two sukoons. You cannot say عن so you have to move one with a كسرة. عن الالتفات في الصلاة. الالتفات is to turn. She asked him about turning in the salah. And التفات في الصلاة is when someone, this can be more than one form. If a person make التفات with his eyes, looking left and right, or with his face. If someone in salah like this, and he does this, like kids, they do in the salah, right? So she asked about al-iltifat fi salah. If someone turns his body away from the qibla, his salah is not valid. If he turns completely from the qibla, you know, like that, that means his body turns. Facing the qibla is a condition of the salah. So that invalidates the salah. But she was asking about the iltifat, you know, just sneaking a look here or there, whether it's moving the face or even with the eyes. So she asked the Prophet ﷺ about that. He said, هو اختلاس يختلسه الشيطان من صلاة العبد. It's اختلاس. الاختلاس is stealing with in a hidden way. You know, when you know the what do you call the ones that the it's not, you know, pocket what they call it, pickpocketing. You know, he's not under the gun. You know, he does not get a gun and says, "Give me your what's in your pocket." No, he steals it, and you don't even know till you go home. Right? This is something that is done in a sneaky way. Right? So this is stealing, and it refers to stealing in general. And sometimes they use it for major stealing, even. Right? But it's usually something that is done in a hidden way, not with the armed robbery or something like this. Even though this can also fall into the same category, but it's more in a sneaky, quickly. That's why snatching also something quickly, something in a sneaky way, and it's snatched quickly. So this is something that shaitan he does min salat al-abd, from the salah of the abd, of the slave of Allah. He wants to take rewards from the person, so he distract him in a quick way. And that's why al-ikhtilas or al-iltifat is a quick one. Sometimes it's a quick thing. You know, you're just looking at something and you come back. Shaitan stole something from you, salah. the rewards, as the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, a person leaves the salah when 1/10 of the reward is given, 1/9, 1/8. And the shaitan, knowing that this is the most important act of the day, so how can he takes as much as he can? If he fails for the person not to make salah, at least get something better than nothing. And every time the shaitan gets something from al-abd, he gets stronger on the next step. Unless a person, pay attention, repents to Allah, fix himself. Otherwise, if he leaves himself, the shaitan, he wins in taking that reward away, plus he gets stronger. He goes to the next level of whispering or dealing with if a person does not pay attention to this. So this is اختلاس يختلسه الشيطان من صلاة العبد to take away the khushu' and the devotion in the salah. Has a part of it in the ruling of al-ahkam of the fiqh of the salah, it can invalidate the salah if he turns completely away from the qibla versus just decreasing the rewards of the salah.